Hi, this is Eric Herrenkohl. I lead the executive coaching practice for Achieve Next. I spoke in a shorter video on a client of mine who needed to speak up more and make her voice heard in a couple of ways that we went about that. One was that you don't have to be the first person to speak in a meeting, but need to make sure that you're the last. And second is that you don't necessarily have to say anything in a meeting, but you do have to make sure that your voice counts by following up with ideas via email afterward. You can check out that brief video to learn more. One of the things I wanted to talk about, given that we've got a few more minutes here to speak, is about one of my favorite articles of all time. It's Managing Oneself by Peter Drucker. It's a Harvard Business Review classic. And one of the points that Drucker makes in that article is that we have to understand how we process information in order to set ourselves up for success. And one of my favorite stories from that article is as follows. Dwight Eisenhower was Supreme Allied Commander for the Allies in Europe in World War II. And during that time, he was known as a brilliant leader of press conferences. Absolutely brilliant. All the press just couldn't get over how articulate and effective he was. Some years later, he became president of the United States. He was known as a complete bumbler when it came to press conferences. Nobody was worse. How is that possible? How could the same person go from best to worst in the same context? And the reason is because when he was Supreme Allied Commander, he operated press conferences his way. When he became president of the United States, he operated his press conferences the way Roosevelt and Truman, those who had preceded him in the Oval Office, ran their press conferences. As a general, he required all the press to submit questions to him beforehand on 3x5 cards. He and his aides would then go through them. He would decide which questions he wanted to address. He would think about those questions. He'd stand up in the front of the press. He would read the question. He'd provide his answer. He was brilliant. Why? He was a reader. That's how he processed information. Some years later, he became president, and Roosevelt and Truman, who had preceded him, were both what I call talk radio guys. They loved being quick on their feet. You shot them a question live, real time. They loved nothing more than being able to respond to it in kind of a very easy, free-flowing conversation. They were listeners and they were talkers. That's how they processed information. That wasn't Eisenhower. But what did Eisenhower do? He ran his press conferences the way his predecessors had run them. He essentially, he and his aides accepted that this was the way press conferences must run. And he was horrible, because that's not how he processed information. Even though it may have broken longstanding precedent, he should have gone back to how he did things, which was submit those questions to me beforehand, and then I'm going to be back on my feet again. I think that I have found this over the years to be a really helpful principle for me to think about, and for my clients to think about from an executive coaching standpoint. For example, for me, I'm a listener and I'm a talker. I like to read, but audiobooks are a phenomenal way for me to intake information. Phenomenal. I can't get enough of them because that's just how that's how information gets inside of me. And then I like to talk about it. The question is for you, how do you process information? Are you a reader? Are you a listener? Are you more of a tactile, put your hands on it kind of person? You probably can look back over your life and over your career and say, hey, these were settings and contexts in which I did a particularly good job. And part of it was because information was being provided to me in a way that served me best. Maybe it's time to get back to some of those things. I look forward to speaking with you next time.